and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into another beer from Threes Brewing. We've had just a handful, maybe 2 or 3 from Threes, based out of Brooklyn, New York, all of which I've gotten from Tavour within the last year. And this is the most recent one that I've gotten. This beer is called Unmitigated. It clocks in at 5% ABV, and it is a Kellerbier. Kellerbier is not a style you see very often, so I knew when this popped up, I was absolutely going to grab it. Kellerbier literally is a German word for the beer style that directly translates to cellar beer. That's exactly what it means, and it's a very, very old German beer style. It's not pasteurized. They put them way down in cellars, hence the name Kellerbier, and they left them open. They were not bunged, so there was natural exposure. And in general, it's believed that there's a ton of yeast activity that adds additional vitamins and nutrients into the beer style, and it is typically going to be slightly occluded, a slight cloudiness to the beer. But this is a great beer style. It's one of the first that I tried when I started getting into really good beer and craft beer many, many years ago. And again, I gotta mention this place. I'm telling you, if you're anywhere near Tampa, Florida, and you have not gone to Mr. Dunderbox, you absolutely owe it to yourself. 50 to 75, 80 beers on draft at any time in this bar, 500 in the cooler behind the bar, and there's probably another 1,500 in the cellar room. So massive, massive, massive selection of beers. They obviously specialize in German and other European beer as well as American craft. But Kellerbier is a style I got into early. So I've had quite a lot of Kellerbier over the years. Thank you, Mr. Dunderbox. Today is Threes Brewing Unmitigated. Pretty cool label art. It's just kind of these wavy blue and orange. Pretty clean design, but I like it. It's very appealing to the eye. So we're going to get this cracked, and we're using our nice tall all-purpose glass here today. Get this cracked gently, gently, gently. All right, poured right in. I don't need to be too aggressive with this. I'm already getting tons of aroma coming off of this beer. It's not going to have a problem forming a head here, it seems. So I'm going to slow it down a little bit. We don't have to get the whole thing in there. We'll just back it off, let that head form. Visually, that is absolutely lovely. It's that classic bright pale yellow kind of goldenish color that you expect on a Kellerbier, and the camera is probably not picking it up, but yes, I can confirm it is a cloudy beer. It is occluded. That is traditional for the style. So this American craft interpretation so far looks the part, formed a wonderful, wonderful head here. Let's get right up over this for a full sniff. Oh yeah. It smells distinctly of a lager, a beautiful one at that. So I'm getting a lot of different notes on here. There's some slight kind of apple-y and honey-like sweet notes coming off of it. There's also some underlying kind of grassiness, some doughiness, breadiness, crust, as well as a nice bit of kind of earthy kind of underpinning to this beer. So it's kind of got not a dissimilar aroma profile to, say, a classic German or Czech Pilsner, though it is obviously distinctly its own style. Pilsners are going to be quite pale in general, and they're also going to be very, very clear. Kellerbiers are not. And in general, a Kellerbier is going to have a lot more malt-forward flavor profile than, say, its related Pils, though they are both, of course, lagers. But this beer smells absolutely fantastic. God, it really does. This is one of those beer styles I could drink anytime. It could be a hot day. It could be a hot day after coming in doing yard work. It could be the middle of winter. I don't really care what it is. It's just a wonderful, refreshing beer style that I don't think gets as much love as it deserves in this country. So I'm excited to jump in. It's been quite a while since I've had a Kellerbier. We're going to jump right in and see what Unmitigated is all about. Oh, man. Oh, wow. Wow, 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 wow. That is absolutely delicious, guys. So, the first thing I want to talk about before we get into what I experienced from the flavor profile is the body and the mouthfeel. This is not a heavy beer style. It's not supposed to be. This feels exactly right. I would say it's roughly a medium light body, which is perfectly in alignment with what you would expect on a 5% Kellerbier. In terms of the mouthfeel, this one's not super resistant, but you can feel it's thicker than water. This one actually does get quite creamy when you agitate on the palate. You don't always get that in a Kellerbier, but this one feels really, really nice, both weight-wise and texturally. It's absolutely spot on. I would call it texture and weight Kellerbier perfection. They absolutely nailed it here. Now, the flavor profile on this beer. It's actually big. It's actually complex. There's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot happening in this American craft version that is quite a bit different than your average Kellerbier you would get from, say, most traditional German Kellerbier brewers. The first of those is the quite noticeable hop bitterness. This has a very noticeable hop bite. It's kind of a combination of an earthy bite like a Fuggle, but like way bigger intensity. In fact, this has a much bigger bitter profile than many IPAs I've had. It's actually got a really nice, distinct hop bitter bite. It's slightly herbaceous. It's definitely earthy, and there's almost a peppery quality to it. Absolutely fantastic. In terms of the underlying flavor profile, there is a lot about a Kellerbier that does taste a lot like a Pilsner. So relatively similar grains are going to be used. What I can say about this is, just like I said before I even sipped on this, in general, a Kellerbier is going to have a much more pronounced flavor profile coming out of the malts, and that is definitely noticeable in this beer. This is one of the more pronounced flavor profiles I've ever had on a Kellerbier, and I think it's absolutely wonderful for this fact. There's a lot happening. So I'm getting a lot of fruity undertones. I'm getting a lot of citrusy undertones. So there's kind of this like apple-like quality paired with like lemon and orange and lime. There's a lot of citrus and a lot of underlying kind of appley notes that are popping out of this beer. And there's also this underlying kind of grass note. You can get that kind of frequently in some Pilsners, but it's definitely coming through in this one. What I did not expect is on the back end of the flavor profile here, there is a flavor that I've only ever had in 1 or 2 beers. And it's a very pleasant and welcome surprise. It kind of finishes with this cotton candy-like flavor on the back of the palate. I'm not kidding. Like cotton candy. Exactly what you think of in your head when you think, oh, what does cotton candy taste like? That's how this beer finishes. The most noticeable beer that I could name that's like that, and it's in the same way, it's on the finish, is the Threes Brewing Delirium Tremens. Absolutely fantastic. A big Belgian beer. I believe it's a Belgian strong ale. This reminds me of that same quality with this cotton candy finish. I don't know how they do it or what makes a beer end up tasting like that on the end, but it's absolutely delicious. So my first impression, absolutely incredible. The body is perfect. The mouthfeel is perfect. It's got a nice kick of bitters, even more pronounced than you get in most classic German Kellerbiers. The flavor profile is just as complex and delicious and big. This is a wonderful beer, guys. I'm going to jump back in for a second sip, let everything re-intensify, make sure I didn't miss anything, then we'll talk about the balance and the finish. Take 2. Nice kick of bitters, nice earthy, herbaceous, slightly peppery. Immediately opens up into the citrus and apple and kind of fresh mowed grass kind of notes floating around. Then once you hit about the 3-5 second, you start getting these doughy, crusty, very yeast infused flavors. Once you get to about the 10-second mark, the intensity dials back a little bit and it keeps going. And on my palate, it's roughly 15-20 seconds in when the intensity really starts to pare down. You have lingering bitters, and then just this haunting cotton candy flavor pops immediately onto the back of the palate. It's kind of from the midway point of the palate back. That's where it pops in, at least on my palate. It's absolutely fantastic. And that is still lingering in direct dichotomy to quite intense bitters from the hop bittering profile they put in this beer. Don't know the variety they use, but like I said, it reminds me a lot of, say, like a classic English Fuggle, just a lot more intense on the bitter front. Guys, this is a fantastic beer. In terms of the balance, I would say this is balanced perfectly to my palate. Maybe a typical German would say, maybe it's a bit forward on the hop bitters, but for my money, this is not a German Kellerbier, so it doesn't matter. It's an American craft interpretation of a classic German style, and they've kept it true to the style, but done their own American craft thing, and I like it. It works with the style. It presents an even bigger beer, and I like it for that fact. In terms of the finish, this is definitely longer than your average Kellerbier. It's not a style that's typically dry. This does not have drying on the back of the palate. It's nice and wet and round at the end, but it's significantly longer than your average Kellerbier, and it really is all owing to the hop bittering intensity. Guys, this is an absolute winner. It's been a long time since I've had a Kellerbier, and certainly a long time since I've had one that I enjoyed this well. This is an absolute winner of a Kellerbier. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, go at my scores. When we come back, we will get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Threes Brewing's Unmitigated, a Kellerbier clocking in at 5% ABV. Threes Brewing is based in Brooklyn, New York. Guys, as you probably could tell, I was really impressed with this beer. This was just as good, if not better, than most German Kellerbiers I've ever had. I absolutely loved it. It was true to the style, but it was definitely an American craft interpretation, what with it being so hop forward, but that did not detract from the style at all. In fact, this is one of the best examples I've ever had, and I have had many, many Kellerbiers in my life. I'm very lucky to be able to say that. This was absolutely top tier. I would say that this is as close to Kellerbier perfection as any of the absolute top tier German Kellerbiers I've ever had, and the scores reflect that. Guys, this is another one that swept it in all categories. It did get a perfect 10 out of 10 in every category: aroma, taste, body, mouthfeel, finish, head and retention, appearance, balance, my subjective thoughts, and example of the style. It was perfect on all accounts. This is definitely one that was more hop forward, even though Kellerbiers can typically be more hop forward, but this American craft interpretation really leaned in that aspect of Kellerbier, and I absolutely loved it for it. Guys, this was a beautifully, beautifully executed beer. It does get a perfect score of 100. If you're a Kellerbier fan, as am I, maybe you've never tried one, I highly recommend it. This is one I absolutely recommend trying to put on your radar, see if you can find it. I got mine from Tavour. It's possible Craft Shack, a bottle shop, maybe a Total Wine, whatever in your area has it. Absolutely worth the time to seek out. This was Kellerbier perfection. Absolutely 10 out of 10. Guys, that is today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to stay in the loop, just toggle on your notifications, hit that bell icon. It's right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.